time I make a video in which I call the God of Abraham a monster or dick or bigot or racist or genocidal maniac or homophobe or woman hater or child abuser or baby killer or moron or ignoramus or immoral louse or violent, malignant narcissist or... I'm sorry, what? Really? I was just getting started. All right. Every time I call God a monster or some such thing, I get a comment from a believer asking something like this. By what objective standard do you make such a claim when atheists by definition have no objective standard of morality for an objective reference point? Instead, they steal objective moral standards from God in order to attack and accuse God of genocide. The gist here is that unless I accept the objective moral standards of the God of Abraham, I can't use those objective moral standards to judge him. Okay, so God said, do not murder. I'll accept that one. So by the God of Abraham's objective moral standards, killing babies is just wrong, right, my religious friends? The Ten Commandments doesn't say, do not murder unless I tell you to commit genocide. Nor does God say in Genesis 9 that a murderer should be put to death unless it's part of a genocidal land grab. This is one of the major problems any thinking person should have with those who believe in the God of Abraham and also talk about an objective morality. None of God's supposed moral instructions can be applied to God himself. He's a moral relativist when it comes to looking inward. And we're not allowed to judge God by his objective moral standards either. Thou shalt not murder does not apply to God. Thou shalt not steal does not apply to God. Turn the other cheek? Don't get me started. But if your objective morality won't allow you to call a being who ordered genocide a genocidal maniac, then what good is your objective morality? There is an explanation for this weirdness. When religious and secular people use words like right and wrong, good and evil, they assume they're all talking about the same thing. They're not. For a while now, secular people use those words in relation to at least human well-being and flourishing. Many of us also believe morality should extend to other sentient beings as well. But for the religious, those words are used in relation to God's plan and, in essence, God's well-being and flourishing. Human well-being is a secondary consideration, if that. And when the religious talk about God's plan, that includes an additional everlasting life we'll all supposedly live after this one, of which we have absolutely no knowledge or understanding. This is how believers can say something like genocide, and killing babies in particular, is good and right. As William Lane Craig sees it, killing babies during the genocide in Canaan was an infinite good because those babies would eventually be taught things contrary to the will of God, which would ultimately land them in a very bad place forever. So murdering them before they had any moral understanding or culpability sent them directly to a very good place, heaven, the infinite good Craig talks about. This is why Dr. Craig, unlike other evangelicals, supports abortion and, in fact, encourages more of it. I'm sorry, what? He doesn't? Well, that doesn't make any sense. For the religious, this is a part of what makes God's moral pronouncements objective. He sees what we cannot, like how things will pan out in the next life. And he can factor that into the moral equation. We, on the other hand, can only see this life and this world. But what the religious don't understand is that moral judgments and justifications which rely on things of which we have no actual demonstrable knowledge, like God or the afterlife, cannot have any objective value, as they rely entirely on one's belief in such things. Subjective belief, to which anyone can lay claim and offer their own subjective ideas in the guise of the divine will. Claiming to have objective knowledge, which first requires subjective belief, is really nothing more than an attempt to bypass scrutiny, challenge, investigation, and obtain the power of presumed authority without ever earning it. This is nothing but a theoretical, philosophical construct. But having that construct keeps the religious from seeing the moral failures of the theory, even when those failures are evident to everyone else. Religious folks will philosophically obsess about objective morality and ignore the fact that their construct allows for the murder of babies. Not philosophically, but here, in this world with real babies. They'll even defend such a thing. They'll talk philosophical considerations until they're blue in the face without taking a second to care about the young girl who's supposed to be stoned to death because she can't show evidence of a broken hymen on her wedding night. For them, good and evil, right and wrong, have absolutely nothing to do with the rightness or wrongness of an act here in our world. They care only about one thing: God's will and executing His eternal plan for us all. Is there another way? I think there is, but I don't believe in an objective morality, nor do I believe such terminology has any place in a knowledge-based approach to right and wrong. And that's what we'll talk about in Part 7. I'm me. Thanks for watching.